Boom. And we're here.
Hello,
Yep.
hello.
Right. Welcome to Terran Tuesdays, our third official stream. How do you feel, Black Knight?
Oh, I'm great. I had enough sleep. I
Mm-hmm.
um, I think I mentioned earlier that my nice and totally not super hot chicken curry was amazing.
Oh, there you
So
go.
yeah, I'm hydrated. I'm in my Terran lane. I've had like plenty of sleep, and I'm ready to roll.
I know what you mean there, minus the plenty of sleep part. I'm also in my lair slash writer's room slash editing bay. You know, the garden's where I go to escape. Unfortunately, that's not too
Ooh,
far of a walk from here. But
yeah,
yes, it's exciting. Well, we're going to wait a little while for RH Snow. Running a little
yeah.
late today.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
she
she'll
she
join us.
should be here soon. I hope.
Indeed. And how has your week been, dear sir? As we kill just a tad bit of time.
Ooh, well, so far so good. I completed a number of projects. I wrote chapters from my new book. I also wrote a couple of articles and posted them on my Substack. And I have just published the latest episode of my ongoing fantasy novella, which is titled An Age of Lost Songs, at least for now. Mm, And I think it's going to be a series. Yeah, yeah. They kind of people are liking it a bit too much. So
Yeah.
I'm trapped. I'm trapped. I'm trapped. I tell you. Please send help.
A
Uh,
little frozen there, Snow, on your screen. Not sure.
Hi,
Yeah.
how are you doing?
There we go. Now you're coming through. Well, kind of.
oh yeah, nice, nice. Hello,
I'm doing
hello.
well. Doing well.
Let me
Talking
let me,
about our week.
let me switch over just a second.
All right. Yeah. You go ahead.
Oh, we are.
Yes, this week for me has been rather boring. Well, semi boring. I've been busy with a lot of work related stuff and not enough writing related stuff. Though I got a lot of ideas in the head going back and forth. I just need to sit down, put aside some time to get that done. But oh man,
That's,
it gets difficult with the day job. It gets difficult with the day job.
oh my gosh, I've got underwater robots.
Oh boy.
Oh,
I don't know.
do you
You're-
you are maybe experiencing like internet
Um,
lag?
Actually, there was an X-class flare today. In fact, there were three in the last 24 hours, and they last one was almost 8.7, which is a very very large flare. So it may be interfering with your communications.
Yeah, that's
wow.
yeah, yeah.
Sounds like a good plot thread for a
Yes,
book. Now that's where the aliens start attacking after the
that's
communication.
right. Right about that time is when the aliens come in, and we'll be like,
And the aliens attacked. Yeah. Oh, hello everyone in chat.
"Howdy."
Um,
Yeah, seeing
Come
we're
on,
frozen.
I can write. My fingers hurt.
For some
Ah,
reason, writing too much there. Then
Oh my
yeah.
goodness, this is gonna be fun then. This is the frozen chosen thread now, but whoever freezes the one.
We are having like the stream of the three frozen terrans,
That'll be us this time.
and one is Lady Snow. So
Hi.
how apt Snow?
I know I'm the snow queen. I'm freezing. If I freeze, just sort of wave at me because I won't know. I'll just be like la 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 la, and they'll be frozen. I won't even know. Yes, we've had communications issues off and on today, throughout the day, And there was actually a radio blackout earlier today in R3, which is a very strong one, and that's associated with the radio waves that come from these flares when they go off. So it's kind of fun to watch it, but it's not fun when it's interrupting your show. So.
It's not fun. Yeah, it's not fun on the other end.
Yeah, really. But it's fun to watch. I mean, it's interesting to look at for sure. Anytime you're dealing with space weather or anything, hi, how are you doing? Oh my gosh, look at all your people. Magic!
Yes, look. She changed her name. She's Morale Officer Grand now.
Oh, really? Yeah, I can't see everybody on the screen. My screen is too tiny, so I just have to wave at people and go, hi. Sometimes I'll see it. Sometimes it's hard for me. Hi, I love you. Thank you for coming. I brought toys today. Toys. I brought things. I got all excited when I heard we were doing
boy.
So I brought things. So,
yes. Right. And I think that's an excellent subject because it kind of blends in with our previous subject of food because, you know, obviously the first sort of kitchenware and cookware stuff you eat off of, they probably have to craft yourself. You can still, to this day, at least within my area, because we got a lot of local Native American tribes, they still sell like handcrafted wooden utensils and bowls and things of that nature. So a lot of that kind of just intertwines perfectly.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's the same. It's the same over here, but we have like especially on the farmers market, we have different stores that sell handcrafts and wooden utensils, cups, wooden cups, plates, and of course the traditional clay pots, which if you look on the internet, you can see like Bulgarian clay pots. They are like super colorful. They look, some of them may look prettier than the food you cook in them.
Oh boy,
they are so cool.
Yeah. When that pot gets really old and messy, when it's not that it's dirty, but it'll have a patina to it that you know somebody's actually been cooking with it, as opposed to the one you just put up on the shelf. I have one that I love. This is metal enamel pot. I never touch it because I love the way it looks. It's got pretty flowers on it. I have others that have been used for almost a century, and they look like it. They're still functional. I have a piece of cast ironware that's like from my great grandmother actually, and an earthenware pot from her as well. And they have that patina of hands. You can tell where their hands have been. And there's something about using utensils and cookware and things that have been used by someone that loved them. It does. It's like people get worn out, and items do too. If they have lived their life usefully, they will show it eventually somewhere with the lines on their faces or the rust on the handle. And you just have to sort of clean it up and love it for what it is, because it's something that's useful. Useful things get worn down.
Oh yeah. And sometimes like the dents and scratches of these items, they tell a story. Right. And this is why having like describing something like that, it brings even more life and depth to our stories.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This is basically what we're going to discuss tonight.
Yay!
Yeah. James, would you like to start
with handcrafts? Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Where do you begin with handcrafts, particularly in fantasy? Because I think a lot, almost like if you really think fantasy as a whole, almost everything's made to handcrafts. You know, you have your swords, you have your armors, particularly in the higher fantasies. Like when I think of particularly like handcrafts where everything's really made, I think of like R.R. Martin and the Game of Thrones series, because they go into basically, you know, how much swords is going to be given to the army, how long is it going to take to actually make, and also like, you know, the quality thereof, and things of that nature. I think when we think of handcrafts, we probably think more like crochet or sewing, or the things like fabrics and things of that nature. We don't necessarily think of the metal, but that in itself is handcrafted to a large degree. And I think I really like the exploration of that, like how all these handcrafted goods in this fantastical time can be used to essentially equip an entire army. And it's a good logistics for those who like to explore it.
Yeah, but I think from my studies in the army, I remember something about this which is, of course, it doesn't change. Never mind the fact that we have long range missiles and even laser weapons right now and stuff. You still need boots on the ground,
Yes.
and the key word here is boots. And if we think back enough, let's say to the time of the Roman Empire, even they had quote unquote boots. Well, in their case, sandals. But without these sandals, without them, have your weapons and armor, but without the freaking sandals, your army will
Right.
march nowhere, nowhere. So yeah, and they had like tens of thousands of artisans who would make these on a like quote unquote industrial scale, but everything is handcrafted. So yeah, yeah.
And
Well, and go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
But one of the things that we forget is that in Army, it literally says you have to have infrastructure in order to have a civilization of any kind, any society. Even the lone drifter in Fallout, he's basically out there, he or she, they're on their own, but they're finding and scavenging items. Eventually, you have to craft something. You have to make something. If you want something that's going to work for you in any story, your characters are going to have to craft. And one of the ways that writers can build their characters is to give them a skill of some kind, but they also have to learn how this actually works in real life. And one of the issues we have, and we've seen this in actually in real life applications, that people know about games. They know how to make things in games, but they don't know how to make it in real life. So we'll go back and we'll see references that talk about it, building something as if it was in a game, if it's in Minecraft, where you punch wood and out, or something like that. You need to learn a skill of some kind as an author. You don't have to learn everything. We talked about this last time, but you need to learn something. You learn something and you build yourself around that. Give yourself at least a working knowledge of how it happens. And that doesn't mean you'll be great at it. I know how to use firearms. I've been working with them all my life, but I wouldn't make a great gunsmith. I know just enough about guns to get myself a little bit in trouble. I know how to use them and defend myself. But when it comes to talking about this particular model or this particular weapon, the parts, not all the parts, I don't have it all down. So I have to know enough to know what I need to ask. But the same thing applies to any handicraft skill. When we're writing, there's always going to be that one person that picks up what we've written and they're going to go, you got this wrong, or you got that wrong. And so one of the things I tried to do and I'm really blessed because I said I'm older, so I get a chance to use the skills I've already learned. And what a lot of people don't know is that I've also been a blacksmith. And so I've actually got a picture to prove it. Yay, let's see if you can see it on here. Can you see that? You see my picture? That's me. That's me with my hammer.
Wow.
That's me in 1995. I was actually in a series called Artists as Angels, and I was blacksmithing copper and blacksmithing jewelry. And I'm actually wearing a piece that I've worn here. This is important to me because as a coppersmith and as a artist, I wanted to make jewelry. This piece of jewelry actually is created entirely from everything that I owned. I actually grew the gourds that I made it with. It has gourd seed ornaments. It has a piece of gourd on it that I painted, and I painted it with. I didn't make the paints. I didn't actually do the paints myself. I did paint it on. I used sparkling like metallic paints on it. But I also crafted the pieces, the little metal pieces that are on here. I did all the hooks. I crocheted the cord myself. And I also learned how, because of I wanted to learn about that, I ended up learning about fiber arts. And as a result, I have a spinning wheel, and I also have some of the ancient tools, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. Because knowing how these things are made means I know how hard it is to actually create these items. Unless we're finding them, scavenging them, sometimes our characters are going to have to create something. In A Watcher of the Damned, there's a lot of things they have to create from the ground up because civilization's been lost and the technology has been lost. So knowing how to do it and knowing what it means, how to create it, at least in a rudimentary sense, I think is very important for authors, because we not only get a chance to discuss it with hobbyists, we also get a chance to share that information with our readers and maybe encourage them to go out and discover handicrafts and arts themselves. So, yeah.
That's actually really true, because one thing that I haven't yet written, but I always thought, I can add that in at a later time, is something that I did learn, and that was to extract clay from the ground and then basically turn it into pottery, and how to, basically harden it up and things of that nature. And a lot of this, a fair amount of like desert bushcraft stuff I eventually want to add in later on. But it very much does come in handy to know the process, how to do it yourself, because going back to writing, a lot of writing is essentially the expression of what a character is feeling and what they're doing. And when you know how difficult something is, or the process, or the difficult parts of a process, even the boring parts of a process, you can really just use that to add in I guess what you'd call texture to your story, where characters like now we begin the very boring part where we struggle to keep our eyes open, things of that nature. And also facts, because your readers do like facts. They like learning new things, especially things that are true and they can take away with themselves. And that's a great way to add sprinkle that into your stories.
I will.
How did you actually learn? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm so excited because I love clay.
I will send you pictures of these pots that I mentioned.
Ooh.
And give me a second, and you can show it. Let's see. I will send it in our Gilded.
All right, sounds good. But yeah, it's actually, I just honestly Googled it like I do most things. I'm like, oh well, I've the way I've approached 90% of things in the modern age is very much just, I have the world's largest bank of information at my fingertips.
You can just Google Bulgarian clay pots, and you will see.
I found it here.
I am 100% sure that with your skill you can make one. You can make it. Doesn't matter what size. You can make plates, cups, small pots, like anything. And if you have access to like good red clay, it's gonna be awesome. And they will impart taste, an extra layer of umami to your food if you cook.
Yes, clay is like, because it absorbs the flavors that came before it, creates that. That in fact, there's called a house flavor. A lot of people, going back to food again, a lot of ancient cultures would make a stock pot that they would keep going on a small fire constantly, and it always had the ingredients in it that would be used to add to any dish that they might make. And clay pottery is so important with this, because until you've been in a situation where you don't have any cookware, and in fact, James had it last week where we did where they had the prickly pears, where you could make a pad that you could actually make it into a pot to boil water in. But when we're talking about cooking things like meat and stuff, and how do you do that? You have to make a spit to go over an open fire. But what if you're wanting to cook something slow and you only have a little bit of wood, or maybe you can't have an open fire because you don't want smoke going into the sky? We talked about how do you do it in the ground. Well, pottery came about because people needed to survive. They ended up making it beautiful because we use these things every day. And when you see these gorgeous creations, they're made just from the very simplest of things. They're made from clay and fire. And that's just the beginnings of handicraft. Because
so good. Look at them. Just look at them.
I know, they're so cute. Look at those. I want all those pots. I love teapots. I'm a teapot person. I love pottery and I love bean pots. Those are like
See?
those look like bean pots. Those look like lidded bean pots. So they get
Yes.
this flavor.
Yes.
I like
Yes.
glass things on the inside. Look at those.
I think I'm sorry, I forgot about the one of the recipes. With all the all that work, I kind of forgot. I'm sorry. I promised to give the recipe to James so he can add it to the video description for next week's stream. Yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah, fire and clay are some of the
fire, water, and clay.
I know it is when you're hungry. So you finally got your house built. In the case of when you're living in survival camping, and like I said, I've done survival camping in the past. And so first thing you do is you get your house together. You got a place to shelter yourself. You have a little food. You have a little water. You find something to drink because that's the first thing. Because you can go days without food, but you can't go to the library long without water. You have to have something to put it in. You have to have something to keep it in. You can't just go lick the blades off. You can squeeze out from fruit. But if you're like us and you're living in a semi-arid place, you're going to have a way to carry that. And that means clay pottery or it means gourds. A lot of times gourds are the things that people go back to each time, which is why I had my gourd jewelry, because I was growing gourds so I could make them into pots. And I actually did make some very large items that I sold that were like vases, and they're almost like wood. And of course we say, oh, well, I'll just make something out of wood. Well, you have to have a way to make it. It's a lot of fun to try to cut something with an axe, but when you're trying to actually create something like a bowl, how do you do it? You have to chop out the middle and chop it away. And then it's sometimes how do you boil with it if you can't burn the wood? You have to finish it out. You have to scorch it over earth, or you have to use it in the ground on top of coals. So these systems take a long time to learn, or you can have a wonderful story that will tell you how to do it. Incorporating some of these things into our stories means that we pass on knowledge that is centuries or even millennia old that a lot of people have forgotten because we're living in that Google age. There's the double-edged sword. We have the opportunity to be the receptacles of millennia of knowledge. What James is doing is so important because he goes up and he goes, what did it take my ancestors 500 years to learn? I can touch a button and I can find it out now. Us as authors, when we share our unique experiences and our unique learning, we have the ability to transfer that knowledge to our readers in some way or fashion. And I think it's a duty for us to say, hey, this is how my characters are surviving in their world. If they don't live in a survivalist world, if they live in a future world, how do they keep in touch with their past? Or what do they need to live in the world they're in? Handicraft takes us there. And it can be as something like forging. When I did metalwork, it takes fire and metal. Well, where do you get your metal from? How are you going to do that? And have any of you all actually ever been digging for ore or mining or go out and dig for any gems, anything like that? Have you ever done that?
No, afraid not.
I was in a mine which it was an iron mine that was like it was dry, was no more ore, and back in the day they used slave labor. During communist times, they sent like political prisoners to dig there, and it wasn't the ore vein wasn't plentiful, and they basically worked for nothing. They just toiled to death there. But it's one of the things which kind of helped me imagine what could be if you have no machines, if you have just your muscles and your back, and let's say pickaxe, or a hammer and a chisel or something like the most rudimentary tools, and a shovel, of course. But yeah, the mine it had like sad aura about it. quite understandably so.
Well, and I think that's part of our journey as in our civilization right now, right here in this area. And I know some of you in chat might actually have done this before too, but ask yourself, how many of you have actually done physical labor? And by manual labor, I mean, how many of you actually have used a pickaxe? How many of you have actually used a shovel? And of course, if you played Minecraft, you have to go back and you actually have to make your first pickaxe. That's where Minecraft does help. You have to make the first one. You have to make it out of wood, and then you move up to making it out of metal. But it's very in depth. But even just the simple act of using a pickaxe. How many of you guys have done that here right now? James, have you ever used a pickaxe?
Yes.
Really? Good job.
Maybe not on a rock, but I used one before. I did plenty of outdoor work, especially growing up on ranches and things like that. You know, during the rainy season, a lot of wild growth goes around the areas you need clear, and you got to spend 3 to 4 hours in the afternoon clearing them out and things of that nature. And you use just about any tool you can grab to rip them out of the ground.
And so, yeah, so if you've used a tool, if you have not as an author and you want to write about this, go back to the very basics. Go outside and get a shovel or get a pickaxe. Work for just a little bit. When people who have worked the earth read a passage from somebody who hasn't, we know the difference. If they're digging and it's muddy, and James is nodding his head, and Black Knight, I know you probably done it too. There's a whole different world when you hit the dirt and it's clay and it's wet and you can't get through, or it's in the middle of the summer and that caliche underpan starts to dry out and it's like chopping bricks, to use a post hole digger in the summer. Learning about these things helps us to move into what does it mean for handicrafts to exist, because we're relying on tools, we're relying on the labor of someone else. And in past times, sometimes it would be slavery. In my mother's childhood, she was actually the one picking cotton. She was actually, like I said, lived in a dirt floor shack. And she picked cotton. She worked with her hands, and she made sure that we knew what it meant to work. But they still had things that came in that were made previously, and they could use them to crochet or to make items. And it was considered an act of leisure to sit down and to be able to create a pot or a pot holder, even made out of crocheted yarn, to be able to sit down and sew something to make it beautiful. So a lot of the things that we considered to have been, wow, that would have been hard because they had to make everything they did, they actually considered it a joy to sit down and just shuck peas and put them in a bowl, because they were so excited to be able to sit down and have the labor of their hands turn into something that they could work with. And so getting to that point where you go through the process of labor to art and craft, I think it's important for authors, because so many times we put that, and we read, and there was suffering in creation. What Black Knight is talking about is absolutely true. Children working in the cotton fields like my mother did, where she was thirsty and she had to work to get to the end of the row to get a drink of water, and she would get paid the same as she got paid half of what adults did, and she was 5 years old working the cotton fields. And so we see that suffering. We also don't really get in touch with the part where they look up and they saw the sky. And my mother said she would be working and she would be so hot and thirsty, but she would look up and see the sun setting and how beautiful it was. And her sisters would read poetry to her. So here's a woman in a dirt floor shack working in the cotton fields. She still has humanity and beauty about her. She still has, even in her suffering, sees the beauty of poetry and the world around her. Those who work with their hands, or those who create, are not ignorant simply because they are in creation or labor. And we have to be able to get in touch with that part of ourselves. And that's why it's also so important as authors that we experience it, something of the world that we are sharing. We need to be able to say, this person was out picking watermelons in the field, like Lily, when she's picking it. When you've grown the garden and its love and its beauty and you're excited to do it, there is joy in that creation. And it may be hard work, but it's still a joy. And the same thing happens with any of the handicrafts that we talk about. What we look at as labor was a handicraft, was also a joy to someone, because they got to sit and create or use their hands or work at the forge to create it. And so I think that's one of the things we have to do as authors, is to get a craft, to work it, to know what it means, to use your hands to get a blister or two, so we can adequately write about what happens, whether it's with a soldier or a woman in a house. It's the same process. It's going from skill to creation.
Yep, yep. It's quite important, even if you, like you said, even if you do not become like a master, let's say, uh, master of pottery. You know what are you doing, and you can craft something with your hands. Well, in my case, I kind of learned how to do very simple things. I tried some woodcraft, but it was like with very simple carving tools. But I still had the tools, of course, and they were machined tools. But you I did not use power tools. I used like super simple stuff, and I kind of fumbled about, made a couple of spoons. I tried to make a cup, which I failed six times. And I almost stabbed myself a couple of times while I was chiseling away
Oh my
the
God.
carving away the wood. But I kind of made it. And when the teacher saw it, he said like, okay, good. Now make 10 more, and after you make 10 more, make 100 more. And I said, no, I have to study for my math test. I'm sorry. And he kind of kicked me out of the class because he said,
no.
you lack conviction. You'll never become a wood carver or anything. It's like, no. So
That's one thing that's actually lacking here, at least on my end of the states, is we used to actually teach a lot of stuff like this in schools, and a lot of that's gone. Like I'm not even sure the high school I go to even has shop anymore. I know you're not going to find any like auto classes, a thing. You know, you're not going to get anything like that. And they used to have, for me when I was growing up, I was this maybe like 10-ish, 15 years ago. In high school, they had a farm at the way back of the high school, and anybody who was taking life science got the opportunity to actually raise a pig, and that was considered their science project for the
That's
year.
awesome.
And I got a chance. Yeah, and they had all kinds of animals there. They had chickens, and then they'd bring the students on, teach them how to work a farm, things of that nature. I got to do a bunch of stuff on the farm. But all that's gone. You can drive by the high school and they still have technically the farm, but it's all empty, no animals, no nothing like that. And these are things that the generations are missing out on. And because it's nothing that's really instilled in people to learn how to make things from your hand. The most you're probably going to get is to learn how to fix the things that break on you. But yeah, it's like you were saying, it's very important to do it. It's very healthy as well to get out there and do something. I think it's good for your mental health as well. One of the reasons I garden, and it's a very good skills to have. And you never hear anyone saying, "Oh, well, I wasted my time learning how to make this or learning how to make that." It's like you never hear anybody say that. And I encourage people to go out there and learn some basic skills. Go make something with your hands. Go find out what you're capable of, because there's a lot. Like I said, I learned how to extract clay from the ground, which was a relatively easy process, but boring process. It's very simple. All you do is like take your loose dirt, filter out all the rocks as best you can, and just pour it into a bucket. Fill the bucket up with water and mix it. let it sit for like an hour, and all the clay is going to be everything that doesn't sink to the bottom. So you just literally pour that into, it's almost like making cheese at this point. You pour it into I used a pillowcase, and you just hang it up. You just hang it up.
Like cheese.
Exactly. Like cheese. You know, if you ever made cheese, you basically just boil milk with some vinegar, and these curds come out, and you just squeeze out all the moisture. It's very much like that. You just squeeze out all the moisture, and you let it sit there, hang there for like 2 hours until there's nothing else dropping, and what's left in there is your clay.
That is amazing.
It's not that difficult. Like, you know, a lot of things that our ancestors used to do were practical as well. There's a multitude of ways to get something done, but you want to do the most practical there is, the most effective. And especially this would allow you to run off and do other things. You know, extract the clay from the dirt and let it hang up there,
Put the sheep,
run off and do other
check
things.
the garden, wash the clothes, etc., etc. Cook something.
And you just come back later and see if it's still dripping. If it's not, there's your clay, and then you can take that and you can make bricks out of it. And you know, if you're somewhere where there's a lot of red clay, I know there's a lot of red clay in like the Midwest and stuff. You can basically just go. If you have this skill, you can go around and just say, "Oh, I want to build my house here." You just take your shovel, start digging, because you're about to make the bricks yourself. You don't have to carry them with you across all this land. They're already there in the ground. Yeah. You just need to extract.
They're just waiting for you.
Go through the process and then make them yourself. Even in the 1800s and stuff, there were people who were brick makers, and that's what they would do, is they would travel around with just like this wooden mold for making bricks, and then they say, all right, we'll make the bricks, you go do whatever it is you want to do, and tell us where to start digging, and we'll go start extracting all the clay from the ground and then start making our bricks. So you know, handicrafts were also a way of life back in the day.
Yeah, when you talked about like the brick makers, I remember something about the old way of making homes, and it was entirely from like natural, let's say, ingredients, construction materials that you have around. And let's say in Japan, they have a specific way. They had a specific way there. They almost lost it. And interestingly enough, there are foreigners who went there and who are interested, who found like really old people in remote villages who are still doing it, still building their homes in like the ancient ways, and they learn from them, and pretty much they just like a few hundred maybe foreigners in Japan and some other old people who know how to do it. But just like you said, they would go somewhere, they would dig sift through the earth and find clay. They would cut reeds from the rivers, and they would also take the rice straw, and they would, of course, like have the wooden beams. And in most cases, they didn't have like heavy tools, so they would just like roughly chop a tree, and they wouldn't straighten it out. And each home is rather unique in shape, because they had to follow the shape of the trees, which, I mean, they picked up relatively straight trees, but they couldn't like just they weren't that metal rich. And in some cases they would use like sharpened stones to even to chop the trees down, and they didn't have nails, so human ingenuity came out with these like almost Lego-like construction in which they would carve bits and pieces from these trees and these pieces of wood, and they would clamp them together, almost
Yeah,
like
dovetailing.
ancient Lego. Yeah, yeah,
They fit together like this. It's called
yeah,
dovetailing or mortise and tenon. You
yeah.
have the parts are carved from each branch, so that way you have them fit together like this.
Like
several
Lincoln
different-
blocks.
Yeah, there's
Mhm.
several different
Yeah.
methods for doing that, but it's always fascinating when you find those using pegs that are carved out of wood, and you put the holes in. You just fit those together and hammer them together, and they'll fit as tight as any nail. And it takes a special hand. This is where you're getting into the magic part of it. And one of the things we talk about when we look at these crafts that are created from these regions, that's almost like an earth magic. They have to know the ground. They have to know the elements that are there. They have to understand what you see. Even as you're talking about finding the clay, there was an element to that was almost like witchery. They would go out and you would have this old person who would know where certain things were located and how they would find it. And it was almost like they could just look and tell you, here, 3 feet down, you'll find these things, or here's a vein of this pure clay that we can take. And not only can they make the clay, but they can also make it into something. It becomes magic. That's the reason why blacksmithing is considered to be magic, because they were taking metal and forging it and turning it into a weapon. They were literally shaping metal with fire and water and hammer and tong, and they could create items that were so advanced that we still, even if you don't know how it's done, it looks like magic. And the same thing applies to everyday use. Whether it was the magic of the hearth, where you had somebody light a fire and it would stay lit, you actually had gods and goddesses that were actually assigned to that task to keep the fire going. That was why home fires were so important. Even something as simple as creating fire. If you haven't done it, learn how. How do you make a fire without tools? How do you make a fire without lighters? These things became magic. And in fact, something as simple as crochet, where we think about old ladies, the old ladies crochet, they do these things. Here's this little cord that I made, this tiny delicate cord that is made like a rope, and it's actually made with crochet and with a very fine thread. And I did that. Well, one of the reasons I learned that is because I wanted to know more about how my ancestors lived and the handicrafts they used. Here's my tools. Now I use these with all of my crochet, and I learned to crochet with these hooks. They're just hooks. These are metal hooks, but they can be created from a stick, and just whittling, I can create a hook. But I have to create yarn for that. I can't just go out and go, hey, I think I'll go get some yarn when there's not any available. So I found tools to make my own yarn, and I had my goats, and I decided I was going to create my own yarn, my own thread, and my own fabric. How do I get the yarn? I have to go out and have to pluck it off the goats. I actually have to go ahead and take that cashmere from that first year of buck and pluck it. That's called wool gathering. When you say somebody's out wool gathering, they're just walking around not doing anything. They would go behind the animals and they would pick it up off the ground. And especially the first year babies have this wonderful cashmere that's very soft. After we get that, you have to take it and you have to take it apart. And these are called the teasels. You actually take these and you take it and you break the hair out to make it fine and to get all the little hairs out. Then you take it further and you put it on these. And this actually, my rocker brushes actually still have some of my hair from my goats on it. And you take it and you put them this way. You go ahead back and forth until you create that hair all running in one direction. But that's not enough. Now you have to spin it. How do you spin something like that? Well, you have to use a tool. It is called I think mine just fell off actually. Oh, here it is. Here we go. This is my spindle. Now we're starting to get into magic, because people consider these tools to be of deep and ancient magic. This is the spindle. You spin it, you put the hair on it, you spin it, and it creates the yarn. And then you have to wrap it on something. And this is one of the most powerful symbols in ancient magic. This is the distaff. It is considered to be the element of feminine power. Now, men also created yarn back especially in the Celtic world, but in our world, it was considered to be the feminine power. The distaff is a source of power, not only earthly power in politics. It was considered to be the person who held the distaff was a person who ran the household. They also had magic, and the magic was to create something out of whole cloth. You'd wrap it around your nitty-notty, and then you would get busy After you did all that work making that yarn to put it together with that crochet hook that you created out of wood, and you would make a crochet hook, there is so much that we have lost because we don't understand what our ancestors knew. And when we learn those things, we learn the roots of magic for fantasy. We learn that it's the creation of something out of seemingly nothing becomes magic. It becomes something that's so powerful. It's in everyday life, just the joy that's woven from these little fabrics. How do you weave? Do we know how to weave? You have to put it on a loom, and you have to actually shuttle it back and forth to create the way that the pattern goes together to create cloth. These things are magic. And when we understand the system of magic of our elders, we start to understand the systems of magic that come out in our fantasy books. That's how magic was created. Knowing that helps us be better authors, and it helps us find magic in our own worlds.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's I couldn't get into that specific class where they taught like proper sewing, and but it wasn't weaving per se. It was just sewing stuff. But I still wanted to know how to at least repair my clothes. But the class was I think they disbanded it. I couldn't get in it on time, and so I had to learn from my parents and friends how to at least do that. But I had a friend who who knew how to make cloaks. He also made like gloves and socks, and all the gloves were like really hard. But the first I think he showed me the very first cloak that he made, and it was from two different, like, there was a difference between the colors of the thread, and he wasn't like he had like some uh, problem with his eyes, and he couldn't clearly see it, and he only saw it when he went out, when the cloak was already finished, and one like a third of the cloak was like light greenish, and the rest was like dark greenish. So it's like
It's
a bit
camouflage.
of a quote unquote camouflage cloak.
I love it. I think it's great. It's little things like that that also let you know that this is a human touch. We have the all this source now between machine made or AI, even where things are crafted, whether it's poetry or anything else, where they're made by machines, and then there are things that are made by hand. To the point now that actually they know that if you put little slubs or little mistakes in something, it'll look more like a human made it. But that actually is when you stop thinking of your mistakes as a bad thing or a flaw, and instead think of it as the signature of the artist itself. It is a sign that you are human. The typos that you have in your writing, or the fact that you made a mistake on something, and you look back and you go, oh man, I misspelled this. This is a sign that you are a human, that you are creating. And I think that we need to rediscover ourselves as human beings, that the mistakes that we make when we start learning a craft, or we start trying to create anything, but whether it's physical or word, it is a sign that we are human. And those little things, I was just thinking back, somebody just said they had picked up the first book of Watcher of the Dam today. And I always get so scared because it's the first book I ever wrote. It was in the middle of the pandemic, and I was just literally scared to death that I know I have mistakes in it. I know I have typos. There's places where I didn't get my page breaks right. And my editors did a great job, but it was just, there's things that get in there that I, as the author, I know now to look for it. That's a sign I was the one that wrote the book. It is my first book. There's nothing else that will ever be quite like it. And so I need to learn to embrace the frailty of human creation, to know that there's things about it that will break or maybe won't be exactly perfect, and somebody will look at it and go, there's this one place you got it wrong, there's this place where you didn't quite put the join together, or there's a place where you didn't make the weld just right, there's a place where the words didn't quite fit the way that I would have done it. That's still a sign of creation. It's who we are as humans. And I think that stops a lot of people from getting into making handicrafts and stuff. We do get around people that are so great at it, and the masters really do want you. When you meet that person that's the woodworking master, they're like the best ever. Like they put their hand to something, they make a toy, and it looks like Santa Claus was living there. Literally, it's the best thing ever. And then you make your little thing, and it looks like somebody coughed and a stick fell on the ground or something. But it's still yours. That's where we start. And I think if we embrace our mistakes as we start off, we learn not to excuse them, but to embrace them. We get better. We keep on trying, and the more we try, the better we get.
Yep. I was talking about this some years ago, and it was a guy who I think spent about like 27 years writing and rewriting and re-editing a single book, which he never published because he kind of fell into that trap of being mortally afraid that he would make a typo here, a typo there, a grammatical error here or there, and people would chastise him for that. So he never published it. And the book was like he had rewritten almost every single part of it so many times that it had already lost whatever initial magic he had conceiving it, the original idea. He changed so much that I think it was sterile. So I always try to convince other indie authors that it is well and good to have to finish something which is the best you can do at your current level, instead of constantly fearing and thinking and overthinking and rewriting and changing it until it's no longer what it was supposed to be when you first wrote it.
Yeah, I've ran into that sometimes. I know for me personally, every time I release one of my writings or my short stories, I always feel like someone just punched me in the gut. Like, oh man, this one sucks. It's not ready. It's ready. But sometimes you just gotta release it, because you can get petrified by fear. You do mess up. You do forget things here or there. But that's all part of the process. And especially in the modern age, we're so spoiled as authors, because we have so much ways not only to release our work, not only so much tools to help us write our work, but we can re-release something some years down the road, change the name, change the art, or maybe just add in some extra things and put in part of the marketing materials. Like, look, it's nicer, it's newer, and it's got lovely art you guys can check out, and we're doing a re-release. That's one thing I look at the authors of the past, and also kind of intertwines with what we're talking about, and that's Handcrafts. Is like a lot of the authors that inspire me are the pulps, and you read about them. They used technology to the greatest of effect they could at that time, and I think one thing that we have is not only this abundance of technology, but it's also a bit of too much available information in comparison to run out there and do something. Like, it's really good to know how to extract clay from the ground, but if you haven't done it, you don't know how to extract clay from the
That's right.
ground. And
Yeah.
same goes for and another good aspect of the doing something with your hands is I think it's an amazing way to overcome bits of writer's block, or even to get new ideas flowing.
This is
Like
so
I said,
true.
I do gardening, and even though those aren't handcrafts, I could look at the plant and just be sparked with an idea instantly that can fit its way into a story. And I believe that handcrafting as a whole is in itself should be added into. I think any adventure writer, if you're an adventure writer, know how to make something with your hands. Go out there on not only real adventures, but learn a skill with you while you're at it and add it in. Like I do a lot of work for these YouTubers because I'm a video editor, and they cover a lot of body language stuff, and I write down a lot of that to add it into the stories later, and also add it in as a skill for some of the characters to have as well. And I think like that's a heavy piece of what's missing from a lot of today's writers is they have all this available information but so little experience. And I think if you're a writer listening, bridge that gap. If you're writing about a character who works on a railroad, learn about railroads, go down to your local railroad, see what you can do regarding that at home. How heavy is a hammer? Go find that out and add in all these because that's a lot of writing is a lot. They always say show don't tell, and the best way to show don't tell is to know how it feels, because then you get pulled from that easily.
Yeah, and then maybe smell the oils, the different lubricants that are around the railway, and maybe experience the sounds of the locomotives and the trains. Yeah, engage all the senses. Yep, engage all the senses.
Well, and that's something we talk about. We talk about how boring some of these activities are. A lot of times, if you're a kid and you went in, most of us, we learned something was boring because somebody said, "Oh, go sit down and do this thing," and you wanted to be running. You wanted to be running and going and playing. You had all that energy, and you wanted to go out and do these things. But as writers, we get so used to doing something this way. We get to where we're typing all the time, or we're on our device, and we don't want to go in and just sit down and just let our brain rest. So many of the repetitive activities that are necessary for survival, whether it's you're crocheting and you're making one stitch over and over again to create a piece of cloth, or you're spinning and you're twisting and you're making the fabrics go. This is what allows the brain to enter that beta state where you daydream or you think about something else. And when you have repetitive motion, it allows the brain to be creative in other ways. You're still creating, you're still making something, whether it's shelling peas or you're making cloth or you're working on small detail work. We still have a chance for our brain to rest and to create something while you're creating. And it is a completely different process. James is right. It is a completely different process when your hands are busy and your brain is free to roam than it is when you are just sitting and looking at a screen. The screen fills up our mind so much with what it wants us to know. There are algorithms out there that are constantly feeding us information. I click on one thing and it takes me to the next where it wants me to go. When I have my hands busy and there is no screen in front of me, my brain is free to wander as it wants. It will go where it would like to go. And that scene that you have stuck in your head where you just can't get past it, where you just can't go any further, when you turn off the screen and you just do a repetitive task, something beautiful where you are creating, you'll not only find that the task itself will go faster, but you allow your brain to be free to roam, and you will probably fix so much of your writer's block just a handcraft activity, because it takes away that visual that we constantly have there of information feeding in, and it creates a blank slate for your brain to paint what it wants to paint.
Yeah, that's so true. I think I mentioned that when I could, I would like plant some stuff in pots because I don't have a garden. But I also used to do some like painting, not painting stuff like uh, special, like super. How should I put it? I would go and help some of my neighbors to repaint their homes, and
Oh,
in some cases when we could go to like a nearby village, we would repaint like walls, ceilings, fences, wooden fences,
cool.
doors, and in some of these villages we would find like really old barns which were made with like woven sticks,
This is so cool.
fresh woven sticks with straw and clay plastered all over it.
Yeah, it's called wattle. It's a WATTLE. It's wattle, and
Hmm.
that's how you would make a you would just have sticks or straw even woven together with the mud plastered down in between it to make a clay wattle that actually creates almost like a brick, but it's reinforced with that reinforcement of the woven straw or woven sticks.
Yeah, yeah, these look nice. I even had like a bunch of photos, but I lost them because they
Really,
were on one old camera. Yeah, it's kind of sad now when I remember about that. But yeah, that's what I did. Now I can't even do that because I get like um, I get irritated by the smell of the paint,
uh,
and my eyes get itchy. So I can't do that.
well, that's another thing that we haven't really talked about. There's so many things that we do now that are digital, entirely digital. They can only be shared digitally. They can only be seen digitally. We don't have a photograph hanging up, or we don't have something that we can look at or hand. On my ancestors, I can go back and I can touch a quilt that my great great grandmother made. That's 200 years old. It's falling apart. I need to get it fixed. What are they going to touch of mine that I make? If I make a digital art and it can only be seen digitally, the device dies. It's gone. What about the photos that I have of myself that I don't have any printed out? Are they going to know what I look like past the age of 30? Because this, that photo I just showed you, that was when I was 30. And so we need physical objects. We need things that we can give to someone, that we can hand them something that someone made. They can go, oh, I remember Uncle James. He made this clay pot out of clay he actually extracted from the ground, or he made this thing. He made this with his own hands. We need that as human beings. We are so attached to our devices and so living in this interwoven interweb of people and ideas that's out there, but it's all just pixels of light. We need to be able to have the physical in our hands. One of my greatest treasures is something I found in my mother's. And my mother was very much a computer age woman, and she always used all of the latest technology. But after she passed away, it was a couple of years, and I was cleaning out a drawer that she had, and I found a tiny cross stitch that she had made herself, and it had just made out of little yarn. And she had put a note in it, and it said, I wanted to give you a hug, but I didn't have one, so here, take this. And it's just a picture of a little heart that she drew. She had put it in this little frame that she had made out of yarn. And it's a hug from my mother. 2 years past her death, I was able to get something that she made with her hands that said she thought of me. We need to give that to other people. We need the books that we create. We need to have physical books. Don't just have the ones that are out there on ebooks. Make sure you get a physical copy of the things you love. Make sure that you make something with your hands that is a creation that's physical, so you can give it to people. So they can say, this human being existed. They created those things that we think of as being just mundane arts. Oh, a woman made a scarf one time and she knit something. Oh, that's what grandmas do. Those were creations of love. That is the essence of that human being woven into every fiber that they created. When you squeeze the clay out and you make this thing and your thumbprints are on it, you literally have your fingerprints on an object. You are imbued. This is a power, a spiritual type of magic, the magic of creation. The way that we create items with our hands, art or survival or words, when they become physical, that is a fingerprint of a human being in that item. And that is another magic that we can not only incorporate into the works that we make, but into our real lives.
Yeah, it's how should I put it? I often studied in my especially in my university years. I often studied like different cultural specific handcrafts from all over the world, and how people had certain beliefs, and they still have beliefs that items created, like, doesn't matter what kind of an item it was, but items had their own like they were, as you said, they were imbued by their creator. And essentially, when you make something like this with your hands, even if it's an assemblance of parts, you put a piece of your spirit in it. And especially Star Shatter, even though they have kind of digital art, but it's a bit different, and the carrier of said art is physical, so you can preserve it for generations to come. But let's say a single spaceship, they make sure that their children, they can craft the parts themselves, and they can build it, starting from the little things, like pretty much every otherwise modern tool which relies on digital technology, and even like almost AI level software. Even that, they are taught how to craft with their own hands, because what happens when you're over reliant on distant others to do your everything for you, it's like you lose part of your creative brain, and that wonderful muscle memory, building that wonderful muscle memory in your hands, in your muscles, which opens the world, yet another world for your for everyone, not just for yourself, for everyone around you to enjoy, be it crockery, wood carving, pottery, everything. It's not just for you. It's pretty much a treasure for everyone.
Yeah, that's for sure. You know, when you make a tool that you can pass down to somebody, especially, I think it's good for like passing down to the next legacy. You're not only passing down a skill, you're also passing down that for which you made or even used with alongside your skill. So you're giving say that next generation your personal items that are imbued with that essence of your work, and bringing it all back to writing. That is for a writer, that's essentially like the core of a character right there. It can drive a character to do something. It could be the one thing that teaches a character that magnificent lesson they need to learn, or dare I say it, maybe they lose or break these tools and have to go replace them. One of my favorite action movies is Highlander, and in the second movie, although not the most loved, he goes to uh, remake his sword because it gets broken, and it goes through that entire process of forging a weapon. He goes to his old home that's completely wrecked because he's from ancient times and he's an immortal, so he comes back to his old smithery, and it's just completely broken, so he has to fix that first and then get the fires going, and then uses all these old school techniques to reforge his blade and make it new and all that. And all that story wise, like that could be an entire paragraph or an entire chapter of a character's journey, and where they can sit in a singular area with these items that have history, and those things alone can be the emotional drive that unlocks that next chapter, or that piece of emotional knowledge or experience that character can use.
I love that. I think that when we talk about the magic that's in, we talked about magic that's in these items. Now, these are new. But when I use a tool that's been used by anyone in the past, we're accepting sort of that spirit of how it's made and what it is. And there's a connection that we have as writers with the people that are in our stories. We use those tools. If we learn some of the things that they're learning, if we find something in our own craft, when we touch the things that they're touching, when we create the things that they're creating, we are having that shared thread. It's making our real experience into this fantasy, makes it come to life. We are literally putting our spirit, even though we want the characters to be their own persons, but we are putting that piece of our spirit into it. Just like when you have a tool from your father. I've had hammers, and I gave many of my father's hand tools to my nephew because that was his grandfather, and I gathered them together, and he's a fantastic woodworker. He actually reclaims waterlogged logs that he finds that are in rivers. They drag them out, and they go and find these, and they make them into beautiful items of wood. And he is the woodworker. He's the one. And so my father's spirit was on these. But I saved a hammer back because when I put my hand around the hammer shaft and I pick it up, I'm touching what my father touched. I can feel his hands. I can feel where they were. I can feel it. And when you pick up a tool, an ancient tool, I have an ancient obsidian axe that I actually found. And it was really strange how it came to me. But you can pick it up, and the way it's created, my hand completely fits. My thumb goes where the person who used this axe to flesh, I believe it was either used for wood or was also used to flesh, I believe, leather. And we're not quite sure, but I put my hand on it. And this person had small hands. My hands go right where theirs did. I am touching an item that was touched 50 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It doesn't matter. My hands are touching theirs. They're touching me. And when I write about that experience, when I pass that on to my readers, I'm creating that spirit to go across time and space and land in the words, and it lands in their mind. And if I can do it right, they can experience it too. But it's not enough for it to just end right there with the reader. I want the reader to go, I'd love to do this thing. I'd love to pick up a hammer and drive a nail and see what it feels like to master construction, even a simple item, or to pick up a crochet hook and to create a length of thread, or to learn how to do knots, or any of these other things. These are crafts that connect us with our world around us and connect us with our readers, and we want them to carry it forward to the next level and try some of it themselves. Whatever it is that we're writing about, there should be something good that they carry away with them and that they put into their real life. Even if it's just inspiration to try to go one more day and try to handle just one more thing on a rough day, or if it really is to create something they've never created before because they fell in love with it when we wrote about it. I think that is the highest compliment, to know that a reader saw something we did and carried it forward and actually wrote, not only just read about it, but did it themselves. I would love to have somebody say, I learned something in your book, and I went out and I found out more about it, and I incorporated it into my life. I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
Yeah, that's probably one of the few major reasons why I kind of did all that extra research, so that when I, even though I'm I'm writing science fiction, space opera, even though when I write about different, like specific different things, especially weaponry and machines, and how to craft a layered defense, and how to dig and build pillboxes, etc. Like even that, I would know at least the basics of it, and in some cases I had done it personally, and especially like you said, when you hold these like old items, and for example, if you had an old wooden rifle, like a, let's say a bolt action rifle, and even a like a pump action rifle, a shotgun, one of the old ones, like when you look at the rifle butt and all the wooden parts with all the scratches and dents, they almost look like hieroglyphics, like
Yeah,
letters, and they tell you the story of this tool, because the weapon is a tool.
it is.
It's, yeah, and they can almost tell you a story. You just have to let your soul imagine it, and it's the same, especially with me and shovels. I like shovels. Yes, I know. I'm so crazy, but yeah, I like shovels. I like shovels, especially old shovels.
I think that is so cool. What's your favorite kind of shovel then? If you're going to say that, do you like the sharpshooters, or you like the wide flat shovels or the grain
Oh,
shovels?
the white flat shovels. I like the white flat shovels.
Yeah, like that's
Mm,
like a snow shovel or a grain shovel. We call them grain shovels. They're big ones that have a wide body and sort of a deep well on it. And there's a flat blade on it. You can scoop a whole lot of stuff up. Now,
yeah, yeah. It's, if you remember in my series,
yeah,
um, the there is a shovel which belonged to the father of one character, Mac, is the space biker, and he finds them dead, like his father and everyone. They were in Lily's colony village, and he took the shovel, his father's shovel, which was made by the Ames company,
oh wow,
and he took the shovel and he buried everyone with it,
oh,
and he took it on his bike, and he carried it, and sometimes he used it as a weapon, to yeah, yeah. So I kind of found a way to incorporate my love of shovels.
Well, okay, so that is what actually calls you. There are things we have in our lives that they're tools or craft items that call to us. Literally, it seems like we just want to learn, even if we don't learn it. They're an object that becomes all consuming to us. There's something about them that we love. James, do you have one that you love that actually is like a tool that just sort of calls to you, a crafting item or a tool of some kind that calls to you?
I wouldn't necessarily say a tool, more so just the garden in itself, the plants, and tending to them in general. I think just plants in general these days grab my attention everywhere I go. Even if I go into a new area, I want to know what
You sure? You sure you're not a druid?
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
I'm
a
definitely
druid.
not a druid, that's for sure.
James is a druid,
A
y'all.
Mexican druid.
That's fine.
Well, uh,
Oh no, no,
what
no.
what what what
That,
stops a Mexican from becoming a
oh,
druid? I
curandera.
don't see.
Are you a curandera? That's what curandera. It would sort of like that in some ways, because curanderas knew all about all the plants and how to use them, and how to create medicines. That's a whole nother story about the curanderas and how to put together the different, like herbs and things that you find out in Mexico and in parts of Texas.
There are a lot of very powerful herbs in Mexico that you could just pick up off the ground, and even some that we still use to this day. There's a reason why in Mexico they still use a lot of herbs, and that's because they work to a large degree, and there are some illnesses where we don't even go to the doctor. We don't go to pick up medicine. We go and we find some herb instead and use that instead. And there's a bunch of stuff like that I think one thing I now need to look into is basically the old school methods of extraction and how they used to do that for the plants. I know in Mexico is mainly teas. They use a lot of teas for stuff.
Maceration. I studied a little bit about it. I'm really careful about talking about it because you can get in a lot of trouble for talking about medicines. But there are some medicines. There's so many medicines that are made that people before. So if we talk about it from a term of tradition, and yes, there is a handicraft to herb craft. Herb craft is the curanderas and the my great grandfather was a root doctor. They called him a root doctor, and that meant they was sort of like a curandera. They would go out and they would find the herbs and they would create. Not only you could create fabrics and things out of them, and I did actually, try to study how would you make flosses from like a milkweed, and can you make something from a milkweed. It's really fine. It's really soft, so it's really hard to do, but also how to make herbs, medicines from milkweed and other items. And the old people knew how to do it. So you always had this one old person, whether it was a woman or a man, they would usually know everything there was to know about it. You would go to them, and if you didn't know what you were doing, you would go and you would ask Granny. You would ask Granny, or you'd ask Grandpapa. And my grandfather was the one that people would go to, and he would go in to find the herbs, and he would create these medicines. Well, because of my family history and how wide apart our generations are, because like I said, my great grandfather fought in the Civil War. So I literally had this really centuries long method of finding out about medicines that are now lost to most humanity. And my father taught me because he learned from his father and his grandfather how to make medicines. And it's not something we talk about openly very much because people are afraid of getting in trouble, or they're afraid of saying the wrong thing, or somebody would do. But you keep that in your culture, and you sort of talk up to people that they're not going to kill you for it. You go, wait a minute, you got this thing going on. It's not that you don't want them to go to the doctor, but they're going to go to the doctor and then just come back home. They're still going to be sick. So you might as well go, and you might as well use grandma's cure. And they'll usually get well. And somebody will say, oh, that's just the power of suggestion. Or maybe they really got well. Maybe it really is a good medicine. And we simply moved away from it because we've forgotten about it.
Yeah, we often forget a lot about those and replace them with other things, focus more on the chemicals and whatnot. That and focusing on the modern day, they just can't profit off of wild leaves growing in your backyard.
Yeah, and they can sell chemicals to healthy people. Yeah.
The onions, it was like the thing they would also want you to. My mother believed in onions. Onions were like from Jesus. You had to have an onion with every meal. There had to be onions in there. If you got sick, you could use onions. You could use onions on everything. Garlic.
Did you ever put onions in the room, just in the corner of the room?
Yes. Okay. Oh, yes.
Yeah, because anybody doesn't.
Yeah, in Bulgaria is the same with the garlic, and then you have like these old folklore tales about the creatures that you call in the West, you call vampires. We don't call them vampires. They are called
Strigoi?
No, Strigoi it's a different thing. It's the vampiri, which they don't drink physical blood. They kind of absorb energy.
I've heard some interesting tales of vampires. Tell me if this is like roughly the same. Is there like supposedly the first encounter with vampires, where it was basically a new kingdom took over an old one? The names are mixed up in my head, so I'm not even going to try. And they basically go down there to show force, say, this is who we are. And then they find out that, some people just been dropping dead.
Is this like the story about the Austrian Empire who they kind
It
of
might have been.
moved into Serbia? Yeah, I remember.
There you go.
No, it's
The
it's
other vampire.
yeah, this is the other vampire. Like the Dampiri, they don't care about the sunlight and that. Like they can move in and out of like reflective surfaces like mirrors.
Yeah.
They you pretty much you're totally screwed if you're trying to like kill them in a normal
Yeah, you
way.
don't ever touch me.
You just can't. Like they can drag you from a window like which is reflecting which is more reflective, or let's say a the polished surface of your table. They can just kidnap you, drag you inside, and you'll just vanish forever.
This actually goes right back to the handicraft part, because we talked about magic being associated with craft.
Mm-hmm.
And brownies is one of the ones that would show up in I think it's we say Western Europe especially. But if you were doing particular crafts, if you were making cream or if you were making cloth, certain certain magical creatures would show up to help you with that process. If you were doing it right, you had to do it the right way. Brownies would get very upset if you didn't leave out. First, you had to leave a gift of some kind. Leaving something in the room, usually it would be a bowl of milk or some cream or a little bit of sugar. If you spilled salt, you'd always throw a little bit over your shoulder, over the left shoulder for the fairies. They would have it. That was, so that way you would have good luck. You leave something for them, and then they would come and they would monitor what you're doing. If you were doing it, they would even help you to create this item. But if you did it wrong or you disrespected these little spirits, they would spoil your crafts. They would spoil your cloth. Your cloth wouldn't do right, or the yarn you were trying to spin wouldn't spin right. And so we have this deep magic of ordinary everyday tasks, of just even a spirit being associated with it, like a brownie or someone like that, to where you have that. And that's in every culture in Mexico. Like I said, when you're doing something, you have to do it a certain way or things will get upset. There are things, and literally, and it was part of that was the way that they would teach. They would be like, no, if you do that wrong, you're going to make, it's not just Granny Smith's spirit that's going to be upset. It's going to be the brownies, and the brownies will not help you, and they may mess with you if you do it wrong. So there are ways that you would learn to do these things properly, so that way it wouldn't mess everything up. And even something as simple as sewing an item or creating a cloth had so much magic involved, because they respected the skill that it took to create these things. And so when you have that item, that also becomes part of your storytelling as well. If this tradition is so deep that to even do it the wrong way may result in the wrath of a minor deity being upset with you, if you don't make the sword just right, then it's going to actually make the gods upset. You start to have some pretty big ideas about how much it meant to these people, just these simple items that we take for granted. Having a spoon in your hand, having a fork ends up becoming an act of magic to create it. Even a nail that's in a wall, that's when you have fairies being attracted to or fearing iron, where you could have iron would actually keep away fairies, because the fae were afraid of the magic of the blacksmith and what it could do to them. And so this was a whole different set of magic. And I just think it's fascinating to me that we've moved so far away from our roots that we don't even know how to make simple things. And we have to ask, are the fairies still out there going, man, these people are lost? It's like, some of the Tuatha down.
They're laughing at us. They're laughing at us.
They're laughing at us. They shake their head going, oh, tisk, tisk, But I think that where there's also a lot of hope, because we're seeing a lot of people go out and they want to make things. They actually want to make things with their hands. It is almost an act of defiance. We have a lot of our Gen Z and younger that want to learn to make something with their hands, even something as simple as braiding hair. And I say this because this is also a craft. What we do with our bodies, and women, there is a certain essence of being in a room with all of your friends and you start to braid hair. And I can sit here and I can do this just from memory, because I usually think of my mother, because she would always take the brush and then she would smack you once if you wriggled too much, because you had to sit still. But just the act of creating this is the fabric of life here.
Yes.
And the fact that you would sit and you would have your friends with you, and they would talk while they would do each other's hair, or they would create these items, whether it was creating braids on your head, and a lot of people still do this today. When you're braiding or you're creating clothes, or you find a t-shirt and it's all old and it's stretched out, and some girl goes, I can upcycle this, and now I can make this into a cute little shirt, and I'm going to paint it, and I'm going to put these things on it. This is the art of craft. It is making something out of seemingly nothing to make it this beautiful item, and people are now interested in it. And this is where we have a golden age of discovery in Google. Yes, they can go up and they can go, I want to touch this again. I want to see these things again. Even if it's not, maybe they're not crocheting, maybe they're taking cloth that's already made and making something out of it, or they're learning how to do hair, or they're learning how to work with their hands. Find something today that you want to do, that you've always said, I would love to try it. Put these hands to work. If you don't have hands, put your mind to work. We live in a world where, yes, a lot of us live with disabilities, especially older folks. But if you have the ability to even speak or to talk with somebody, to share what you know, get yourself involved with a craft of some kind and make something. Handicraft is magic. It is not only survival, it is the essence of generational magic being passed down from one person to the next. And I think it's a really exciting time actually to be alive, that now we can learn all these things without having to find that master, without having to go to the mountain. We type it in and it shows up. We can become that next person. When the internet finally passes away, because someday all things will, you might be the one that people come to on the mountain and go, how do I make cheese? I know how to make cheese. How do I make clay? And they will come to you, and you'll be the one, and you'll, like, wisdom and everything. They will bring you like snack cakes or something to try to get this information from you. And you will be the one. Be that person, even if it's just a receptacle of knowledge. Know how to work with your hands. And if you can at all do it, do it.
Yes. Forge the knife. Grow the plant. Write the book. Weave the cloak.
Yes.
And with that, I think we just completed our third stream. We're at the hour and a half mark. Hope everybody loved their time here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sticking around, guys. If you have any questions for us, put them down in the comment section. Especially if you're watching the replay, we'll be happy to answer those live. We always have kind of like a little question segment. So any questions at all, guys, just throw them at us, and we'll make sure that they get answered. Not on this stream, the next stream.
Yes, and
all right.
If you have some ideas for additional themes that you want us to discuss, please put them in the comments. So, yeah.
That is right. Black Knight, where can people find you? Where can people find your stuff at?
People can find all of my published work, the Star Shatter books book series, and the Velin book series, and my two anthologies on Amazon. And they can also find my current, most recent publications on Substack, and of course on Minds for those who don't have Substack or don't use it. You just look for my black armored face, my armored gob, and just look there.
Excellent.
You'll find.
How about you, RH Snow? Where can people find you?
You can find me and my series, Watcher of the Damned, at watcherofthedamned.com, where we actually go pretty much in depth into leather work, because I have a bunch of cowboys living out there that are having to recreate the Old West by putting together what they can from the bones of the new civilization. And so we do a lot of leather work in there. We also do some medicine craft. We do some herb craft. And there's a lot of other interesting little handicrafts that I've tried to include, because I felt like they were important, and there were things I've done, including how to spin cloth. And so if you want to see those, and you also want to see people fighting and surviving and wrestling, then go to watcherthedam.com, or you can find all my socials at flow.page/rhsnow. That's flow.page/rhsnow. And I'd love to hear if you'd love to see what you got on the what you think about the books. So give them a try. Go ahead and look at it. And we will fight to be free. Woo! Go ahead.
All right, everybody. If you like the stream, please leave a comment, give us a like, and subscribe. I'm James Esparza. I love writing short stories. You can catch my short stories at worldwithoutendlore.com or worldwithoutendlore.substack.com. It's always a mouthful. And I'll be uploading a variety of because everything I write is all in the exact same universe. I'll be uploading a variety of songs here on this YouTube channel where faction introductions. I use the songs to introduce the various factions of the world. And on my Substack, as I'm writing a short story, I'm keeping everyone quelled for lore by delivering once a month 3 different lore cards and a magazine spread for everybody to enjoy. My $5 subscribers get it 15 days earlier. It'll be launching tomorrow for theirs for this month's. But if you really like that, you can check it out for free in 15 days. It'll be released for everybody. So give this channel a subscription. Check me out at worldwithoutendlore.substack.com. And with that, thank everybody for joining us. It's another successful stream. Please come join us next week. Same faces, same good time, and we're all going to have a lot more fun. Thank you again, everybody.
Love you.
Yeah. Good.